Tom Hanson was trained as a career U.S. Foreign Service officer, served in many countries. You can read more about him over there. But he's a consultant on foreign policy affairs at the United States and international levels. And currently, he holds the position of diplomat in residence at University of Minnesota, Duluth. If you want to Google him, you should have at least 50 hours to read it. May I present to you Mr. Tom Hanson.
So, an election year, what an election year this is. I've been groping for a word to describe it. A lot of people, no pun intended, anyway, a lot of people, frankly, just want to give a jolt to the system. I've just gotten back from some conferences in Europe. It's exactly the same mood over there. It's not just our country. Something is happening internationally now, which is causing this. I think that President Obama, frankly, is very happy to be leaving the presidency. Michelle looks radiant. Each day that she gets closer to leaving the White House, she looks better and better. It's been tough, obviously. The president's been blocked. Our system seems blocked to many people. Whether it will be so after the election remains to be seen. But he gave an interview in the Atlantic magazine in April, which I highly recommend, setting out basically his views of what's happening in the international situation today. His frustrations, he's very frustrated about still being dragged back to the Middle East. He believes the world is turning toward Asia, and thinks U.S. policy should be focused more there. But he, as I say, I think there's a lot of frustration that comes through in this interview, and it's very blunt, very frank. I highly recommend it. Now, one of the sort of signals that people have been looking at for the mood internationally has been the Brexit vote. This is the vote that took place earlier this year, in which, very surprisingly, the UK decided to leave the European Union. I was in London last month. The government there, Theresa May, is doubling down on Brexit. It could well be what they call a hard Brexit. Our Secretary of the Treasury, Jack Lew, in the aftermath of Brexit, was asked what happened, why, and he said, Brexit reflects widespread concerns that working and middle-class families are not benefiting from globalization. And he pointed out that the number of protectionist economic measures during the past year have reached 644 among the developed countries. There's a wave now of growing protectionism. And there's a sense of rising national identity. It's as if people, as part of this anti-globalization mood, are looking for new identities, and the nation and the nation state seem to be striking many people as the right. It isn't just make America great again. You see this in Poland, you see it in many countries in Europe. And Theresa May, the Prime Minister now of Britain, from the Tory party, from the Conservatives, said something last month to her party Congress that I found quite striking. She said, if you believe you're a citizen of the world, you're a citizen of nowhere. You don't understand what the very word citizenship means. In other words, you can really only be a citizen of a state, of a country. You can only vote for national leaders. And that's the problem in this globalized world, that it appears that we're moving back toward a kind of a, whether it's populism, national orientation, and the question is, where is this going to lead? Now, President Obama, in his final, here he is at the UN General Assembly, his farewell address to the UN, put it in even starker terms. This is sort of his parting word to the world community. He said, dangerous currents risk pulling us back into a darker, more disordered world. And through his entire speech, he stressed the danger of a disorderly international system. He said global capital flows have increased inequality. Strong men around the world say retrenchment is necessary to beat back disorder. And he spoke about the increasing skepticism of our international order, even in the most advanced countries. This was a fairly, I would say, downbeat assessment, and I'm not sure I would go quite that far, but the UN was born out of a dark and disordered world. And it's been 70 years, as of last year, since the UN Charter was signed in San Francisco. Are we about to revert back to a dark and disordered world? If you look just over 100 years ago, 2 anniversaries have just passed. The anniversary of 1914 and the outbreak of World War I, and the anniversary of 1945, the end of World War II. Historians increasingly are seeing this as one conflict, our version of the 30 Years' War. The 30 Years' War from 1618 to 1648, which led to modern international law, was actually a series of conflicts, but in retrospect, one basic war. And I think that the outbreak of World War I, which led to tens and tens of hundreds of millions of deaths, was, in retrospect, unnecessary. It was because of miscalculation, people underestimating the dangers. And of course it led to, from World War I in the trenches, to the fall of Berlin. An era which is being called now the era of total violence. We forget how dark and disordered the world was on the eve of the UN. This was one of the low points, really, of human history, when you think about it. Now, 1945, October, they met in the Opera House in San Francisco to draft the UN Charter. That's what we celebrate today on UN Day, 24th of October. It was all about peace.